And when I got my gun out of my room,
because stalking, it's a good charge. Because I asked Joe when I talked to Joey a while ago. He may not get lucky again.
I will light you up, and I will kill you.
She had somebody come to her house. She pulled her gun on him.
You just keep that pistol with you.
The first video is 44 minutes and 24 seconds, and it is literally 44 minutes of Kersh and her accomplices ignoring her repeated confessions while conspiring to charge Mr. Armstrong with anything they can think of and bad-mouthing him the entire way. After 44 minutes, they still don't have anything to charge Mr. Armstrong with legally. They do settle on harassment/stalking, but they don't have any probable cause, no evidence, no reason to charge him with any crime. Due to the length of their illegal conspiracy session, I'll split the video into two parts so it's easier to watch. Both of the police officers in this video are wearing body-worn cameras. I'll primarily use the camera attached to Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt, but I will occasionally switch cameras to Deputy McKenna's camera when Jerry Witt's camera isn't showing something. Both of these videos can be viewed in their entirety, unedited, at John Armstrong's YouTube channel. One of the first things that you'll notice is that Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt greets Lauren Kersh and her son by name. He knows them, they're close family friends.
No, I'm not. Come on, Lauren.
Hey, all in there.
Yeah, it's the people.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, well.
Yeah.
How are y'all doing?
Good.
We're here to take care of you.
I know.
Somebody not acting right?
At all.
What happened?
He is tripping. Y'all come in.
Well, let's handle him. What are you doing, Noah?
Good.
How are you, bud? You been doing all right?
Yes, sir. Good.
Yeah.
Alright, so this is like the third encounter I've had with him now. We just got home.
Joe said 2.
This is the third one.
This is the third one.
Yeah, because he showed up at the jail whenever I was still working there. So like 8 months ago.
This is the commissary guy?
No.
Okay.
His name is John Armstrong. He was
John Armstrong. I couldn't remember his name.
He was a jailer there, and he quit when Johnny Brown was still the sheriff or whatever, and cause he's freaking a psycho. Okay, so it was.
Did he get involved in something that happened in the jail?
I think he got a write-up or something, and he didn't make a position, and it made him mad, so he ended up quitting. But he like wrote a letter to the news about Johnny Brown, and like, I guess he wrote stuff in there about me, and he feels like he keeps me apologizing to me for talking bad about me, and I don't care, you know? So he,
Was it when he was still working there, he was talking bad about you? Or after he had quit?
After he quit. Maybe even while he was there, too.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so the very first thing before we get into all of this is that this entire thing is illegal from the very start. It is absolutely illegal, and here's why. The police do not have any reasonable suspicion or probable cause to believe that Mr. Armstrong has done anything wrong, so they cannot come over to her house and take a report against Mr. Armstrong. Reasonable suspicion and probable cause are a police officer's lawful authority to investigate a crime, to investigate anything, or to arrest a person. To do anything within law enforcement, there must be reasonable suspicion and probable cause to arrest. So neither of those exist here. The previous phone call that we had just watched in the earlier video, they did not accuse Mr. Armstrong of anything. They badmouthed him plenty, but they did not accuse him of doing anything wrong. They did not say he punched somebody, he cussed at somebody, he did anything. So there is no reasonable suspicion to believe that Mr. Armstrong has done anything wrong, and there is no probable cause to believe that Mr. Armstrong has done anything wrong. Now, as we get into this, we're going to be talking about many different things, specifically how they've done things even wrong, even if there was a criminal investigation. But that all comes back to the fact that this thing is illegal from the very start. This conversation cannot exist. And that is the most important thing you can hear or see in this video. There is no reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Now, of course, there's plenty of reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and an absolute confession from Lauren Kersh. She absolutely confesses to pulling a gun on Mr. Armstrong, but nothing exists against Mr. Armstrong except for slander, bad-mouthing. So reasonable suspicion is the reasonable suspicion that a specific crime has been committed. Probable cause is evidence that a crime has been committed. So if we were to create a false scenario within this case, which again, this never happened, but if, for example, Joe Fitzgerald had called dispatch and said, "Hey, Mr. Armstrong has threatened to kill my sister via text message," and then a week later he threatened to kill my sister again through a phone call. That would be reasonable suspicion to believe that Mr. Armstrong has committed the offense of stalking. So then it would be perfectly reasonable to send these police over to take a report from Kersh. That's reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. Now, as for probable cause, let's say in this same scenario, the police go over there and talk to Kersh, and now Kersh shows them these text messages where Mr. Armstrong has threatened to kill her, and then let's say she had recorded the phone call where Mr. Armstrong threatened to kill her. So now the police would have evidence against Mr. Armstrong, so that would be probable cause to arrest Mr. Armstrong. Now again, none of this exists. We just completely made that up, but that's an example of reasonable suspicion and probable cause for the criminal offense of stalking. So none of that exists here. And again, these police officers have no lawful authority to be doing what they are doing. No accusations have been made against Mr. Armstrong. So there's several things to address here. The first is the obvious greeting. They greet each other in a flirtatious foo-foo voice. Both of them do. And it's nothing but smiles and, "Hey, how are you?" when allegedly she needs some kind of help. Okay, she obviously doesn't need any help. She's not frantic. She's not going, "Oh my gosh, this guy came by here and he did nothing." So obviously there's no emergency here. And everything is just sunshine and rainbows. The next thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that this is not an unbiased police officer. Jerry Witt knows Lauren Kersh and her son, apparently, as he greets him by name. So he is a family friend, and just like Sergeant Joe Fitzgerald, he's not going to take an actual report here. He is going to take the verbal report, but the one who will be writing it is Mike McKenna, the deputy who stands off over to the side the entire time talking to Kersh's son and not doing anything or saying hardly anything. So this is illegal in more than one way. It's first illegal that they are sending deputies to take a report against a person who they have no reasonable suspicion or probable cause to believe has committed any crime. It is illegal that they are sending a deputy to take a report from the perpetrator of a crime and misrepresent her as a victim. And it is also illegal in that Sergeant Joe Fitzgerald has taken a report himself, and he is now using Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt as his proxy, as his agent. The police officer has to take his own report. He can't take Joe Fitzgerald's report for him and put his name on it. And even there, Sergeant Jerry Witt is now using Mike McKenna as his proxy. So now you have Jerry Witt taking down all the details from this report and then having Mike McKenna write it up as if Mike McKenna had asked all the questions and taken the report. So it's fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. If an actual crime had occurred here and Joe Fitzgerald needed to recuse himself because he's the brother of Kersh, and Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt needed to recuse himself because he's family friends with Lauren Kersh, that would be fine, but they would need to send McKenna, who would take his own report. McKenna would be asking all of the questions. Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt wouldn't even be there because, as most people are aware, harassment and or stalking is not a very serious offense. And being that it is just kind of a run-of-the-mill criminal offense, there would be no reason to have a supervisor present for any of this. Mike McKenna could go and handle this all by himself. Again, they have to send somebody because they're committing a crime, and they need to ensure that the correct report, the fraudulent one, is taken instead of an honest report. Deputy McKenna is the patsy here. He's the peon. He's not going to go against anything his supervisor tells him. He's a go-along. As most police officers are, most of the so-called good ones, a dirty cop who's their supervisor tells them to do something and they turn a blind eye to the criminality of it and they just do it, like McKenna is doing right here. And also like Dispatcher Haley Watkins did. So the first thing that both Kersh and Witt do is they begin to badmouth Mr. Armstrong. Witt asks if Mr. Armstrong was involved in anything, which means was he involved in any kind of a scandal or wrongdoing of some sort? You know, did he sleep with an inmate or did he bring drugs into the jail? Because these are the kind of things that go on in correctional facilities, if you don't know. But no, Mr. Armstrong never did any of those things. He had an outstanding record. And again, he's just bad-mouthing him. And so Kersh goes in and she joins him and she starts talking about she thinks that he quit because he was turned down for a promotion, which is not true. So what they're doing is they're engaging in speculation, unsupported speculation. They don't have a clue about Mr. Armstrong or who he is or what he's about, but they're just bad-mouthing him. And they have to do that because Kersh just pulled a gun on him, so they've got to make him look like some kind of a scumbag. And of course, she throws out the, he's a psycho, but she can't state why he's a psycho. He's a psycho because he knocked on your door? Are you kidding? Ironically, she says that Mr. Armstrong, or that she thinks Mr. Armstrong quit because he received a write-up or got passed up for a promotion, when that's exactly why she quit her job, as verified by her own employment file. She was written up by her supervisor, she got mad, and she quit. And finally, we get to the important part of the beginning of this video, and that is where they talk about Mr. Armstrong having gone to the Waxahachie Daily Light. That is the local newspaper in the town of Waxahachie, located in Ellis County. Mr. Armstrong did go to the Daily Light. He reported many wrongdoings by the Ellis County Sheriff's Office, and the Waxahachie Daily Light investigated every one of them, contacted Mr. Armstrong, and confirmed that yes, everything Mr. Armstrong said was the truth. So here is what Mr. Armstrong said to the Waxahachie Daily Light. that Kersh claims that Mr. Armstrong keeps apologizing for. Mr. Armstrong did apologize to her one time, but not over and over again as she makes it out to be. Kersh, of course, had a short-lived career in pornography in her past, and she then quit, cleaned up her life, and went to work at the sheriff's office. The problem with that is that the sheriff's office has a policy that their employees must be of good moral turpitude, and of course somebody in pornography is not of good moral turpitude. So she couldn't work at the Ellis County Sheriff's Office. However, a special exception was made for her because her brother was Sergeant Joe Fitzgerald, one of the highest ranking deputies working for the Sheriff's Office. So they allowed her to work there when they wouldn't have allowed any other porn stars to work there. And she just got to work there because of her brother. So it was nepotism. I chuckle, of course, because here we are now, and she's going to get away with her crime because, again, her brother is one of the highest ranking deputies who works for the Ellis County Sheriff's Office. When it comes to the Waxahachie Daily Light, they are the reason for the severity of what they are doing to Mr. Armstrong. I guess you could call it a partial motive or a dual motive, as, of course, the primary motive for why they are doing this to Mr. Armstrong is that Lauren Kersh, Sergeant Joe Fitzgerald's sister, has pulled a gun on him and they need to cover it up. But the reason why they have gone to such great lengths, why they are doing so much risking their own personal careers as police officers to frame this person, is because they are afraid that he is a contact in the media. They think that he's going to go to the Waxahachie Daily Light and they're going to report this. This is also why they didn't take a wait-and-see approach. They're trying to get their story out there before Mr. Armstrong can. And they're trying to stop Mr. Armstrong from getting his story out there. They're trying to discredit Mr. Armstrong as much as they can, and they're doing that by tying him up in a legal case. By being accused of a crime, it makes him look bad. It makes him look less credible. These deputies will also use Mr. Armstrong's involvement with the Daily Light to convince then current Sheriff Charles Edge to join in on their conspiracy, as all police officers, but especially the Ellis County Sheriff's Office, are terrified of the media. I say especially Ellis County because there are many police corruption stories involving the Ellis County Sheriff's Office. And of course, what really seals the deal with Sheriff Chuck Edge, as well as many other police officers, is that Mr. Armstrong is viewed as a traitor for going to the media in the first place. So they are both afraid of Mr. Armstrong because he has blown the whistle on corruption in the past, and they're afraid that he is going to blow the whistle on corruption now. And they are also mad at Mr. Armstrong because he is a whistleblower. They are retaliating against Mr. Armstrong. They're trying to get even with him.
But so it was probably like 8 months ago before I resigned from there. I was going outside my car, and he was waiting outside where we all park, where all of us park, whatever. He was waiting out there, and he was like, I just wanted to talk to you and apologize to you because I said bad stuff about you. And I was like, hey, it's cool, appreciate you apologizing, but you can move on. Like, I forgive you.
And this was after he already quit the job.
Yes.
So he didn't have any reason to be up there.
He didn't have any reason even being there. He had quit 2 years before that. I'll have a seat back. Yeah. So he had quit 2 years before that. So he had no reason to be up there. So I told him, okay, I forgive you, dude. It's okay, you can move on, no big deal. And then,
what they are trying to do here is to establish a pattern of threatening actions by Mr. Armstrong, which they cannot do. You'll notice that earlier in this conversation, Kersh and Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt speak about this being the third encounter with Mr. Armstrong.
Well, so this is the third encounter I've had with him now. We just got home.
See, Joe said 2.
This is the third one.
This is the third one.
Yeah.
The first thing that needs to be said here is that in this case, in this situation, None of these encounters or anything that they're working on or saying matters because Lauren Kersh has pulled a gun on Mr. Armstrong and she's about to confess to it over and over again. And it's a crime first on her part, no matter what. So all of these encounters and everything they're working on to try and get Mr. Armstrong is after the fact. I'm addressing what they say anyways, and I'll address what Kersh says, any of the lies she tells, and play devil's advocate and pretend that they're telling the truth, simply to prove that even if they tell the truth, they're still committing crimes. Their big mistake here is that they did not lie enough, and they didn't do a good job at lying. But again, even if they were not lying and making all of this up, they are still breaking the law. So having one encounter with someone, or two encounters, or 3 or 4 or 20 is not a crime. What makes an encounter, or 2 or 3 or 4, pertinent to an investigation, a criminal investigation, is a crime being attached to these encounters, which there's not. So the time that Kersh is talking about is 7 months before, in November of 2018, when Mr. Armstrong did go to the Ellis County Sheriff's Office and apologize to her. Now, this was not a dimly lit parking lot or a dark back alley. This was a well-lit parking lot in the middle of the day with many officers going back and forth through the parking lot. When Mr. Armstrong found her, they had a friendly conversation. There was no, ooh, you're creepy, weird, leave me alone. It was a friendly conversation. And even during this conversation here in Kersh's own house, she's not saying that this was an unwanted or unwelcome conversation between her and Mr. Armstrong. So even if a legitimate criminal investigation were going on here, this wouldn't be an encounter that they could count against anyone. Another thing to take note of here is that Kersh is trying to act like an authoritarian, or as a tough guy or a tough chick. And she wasn't that way when she spoke to Mr. Armstrong before. She was a dainty damsel in distress. She talked like a regular female. But now she is trying to talk like Miss Tough Chick because she's trying to put on an act. She has been a jailer in the past, and she's also a certified police officer. So she's gone into her tough chick cop mode, and she's trying to impress these guys, and she's trying to act like, oh, and I told him he better not yada, yada, yada. But she never did that. Until she pulled a gun, when she actually did. But all prior conversations, she was a dainty female who cried on her front porch as she told Mr. Armstrong how all of the sheriff's deputies harassed her. And she's doing this to try and add weight to her claims. Because, of course, if she says, well, I cried and I hugged him and I listened to everything he says and entertained the idea of going out on a date with him, then that takes away all of her credibility, so she has to do something to try and convince them that she was strong and tough towards Mr. Armstrong. Kersh claims that Mr. Armstrong had no reason to be at the jail on that day, 7 months ago, which Mr. Armstrong doesn't need a reason to be there on that day. It's a free country. He can go wherever he wants to.
I feel like he's been here like 3 weeks ago because I heard a bang on the door. I was in the shower though, and so by the time I got out of the shower and put a robe on and got my gun, because who comes to my house unannounced in the middle of the day? Nobody. But by the time I made it to the door, there was nobody there. So I'm like, okay, I don't know who that was, but now I'm putting it all together. I feel like it was him. And so...
But we don't know that.
We don't know that.
Okay. You didn't see his truck leaving or anything?
But, so last Monday, today's Sunday, so like a week ago, last Monday, he showed up. So I wouldn't have even opened the door. My friend was on her way over here, so I thought it was her. And I was talking to my other friend on the phone, and I said, oh, Stacia's here or whatever. So I opened the door without even looking, and it was him standing there, and first thing he said was, I'm here to tell you I'm in love with you. And I was like, I don't even know you. I was like, I don't even know your first name. Who are you? You know, and he was like, my name is John. You know, and I'm like...
Did y'all not work together?
Like, I worked with him maybe... He was on a different shift than me.
Okay.
Because I was on transport, and
How long did y'all work here at the same time?
Probably, like... mean, we didn't have any encounters with each other at the work. I mean, like, I didn't speak to him, like, nothing. I don't even know who he was. Like, I knew he worked in Bogan and that was it. But when he came over here on Monday, he, said that, I love you, whatever, and I'm like, don't even know you. You don't know me, and you're not in love, like, you can't be in love with me if you don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, well, I just need to apologize to you for saying all the bad stuff I said about you. And I was just like, I've already told you, you don't have to keep apologizing. Like, move on.
This was at your front door?
This was at my front door.
Did he ever try to come in?
No, I told him to back up.
Okay.
I was like, I opened the door, and it startled me. So I'm like, whoa, what do you, and I was like, first of all, he was like, I love you. And I said, first of all, you need to back up away from my door. And how, like, why are you here? Like, go, do not ever, and I told him, do not ever come back by my house. Ever. You are not welcome here. And he
How does he know we live?
I asked him that today, and he said I looked you up. Whatever that means. I have no idea. But today, this is the freakiest thing is, I wasn't even home for 2 minutes. We just pulled in from his baseball game, and
Think he was following you?
no, they lost, but they did really good though.
6 to 7.
6 to
Oh,
7.
right.
Do you think he followed you
He's
here?
stalking me from somewhere. He has to be. Because they're done.
So you were home maybe 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Like, I pulled into the garage and he was asleep, so I carried him in and I laid him on the couch, and so I went home 2 minutes when it was boom, 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 boom at my front door, and that door was unlocked because I just walked in, so I ran and locked it, hit the deadbolt, and when I got my gun out of my room and I looked through the peephole, and it's him. And he turned to walk off, but I felt like if I didn't let him know, I ain't fucking around. Sorry. So I felt like I needed to let him know that. And so I opened the door, and I had my gun right here. I was like, look, bud, I'm not playing around. Like, I will light you up. All this lead, all of it. Like, I have a child here. I already told you to not come back over here, and I will kill you.
So you did tell him the last time he came over here that y'all talked at the front door, do not come back
over here.
Okay.
I told him he's not welcome here. Do not ever come back to my house. I have a kid here, and I'm like Mama Bear. Do not show up to my house,
So the first thing we'll address here is her claims that she was very abrasive toward Mr. Armstrong, that she told him not to come back, don't ever come back, blah, blah, blah. So that's, of course, a lie. And there's a simple way to kind of know that she's lying throughout this entire thing, and that is that she never says what Mr. Armstrong's response to what she said was. So she said, do not ever come back, blah, blah, blah. Well, what did Mr. Armstrong say to that? Here they are trying to make a case for stalking/harassment, which is about making threats. So allegedly, Mr. Armstrong has made some type of threats or some kind of violent behavior, and yet the only one who is making violent threats or behaviors is Miss Kersh. So she says that she told Mr. Armstrong, you don't ever come back here, yada, yada, yada. But yet she doesn't say what Mr. Armstrong said to that. What was Mr. Armstrong's reply? Did he say F you? Did he slap you? What did he do? And why are the police here? So that's a really simple way to know that she's lying throughout this entire conversation. Now, she claims that there's a boom, boom, boom at her door. Okay? It simply doesn't make sense because she says then she went and got her gun and looked out the peephole and Mr. Armstrong was walking away.
And when I got my gun out of my room and I looked through the peephole and it's him and he turned to walk off.
Now, it does not make any sense for a person who is beating on your door, going boom, 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 possibly trying to get into your house, to beat on your door and then turn around and leave. That makes no sense. Now, throughout this entire conversation, Ms. Kersh, Joe Fitzgerald, nobody has accused Mr. Armstrong of doing anything violent or aggressive. Nothing. Not a single accusation. And again, that's a simple way to know they're lying. So here we are, we're supposed to believe that Mr. Armstrong has beat on her door, and yet he's not done anything violent towards her. He's not cussed at her. He's not done anything towards her, but he's beating on her door. Yeah, right. Towards the beginning of this clip, Kersh again is obsessed with how many encounters, and she tries to claim that Mr. Armstrong came by her house and beat on her door, or knocked on her door, while she was in the shower. And they, of course, come to the conclusion, well, we don't know that. Well, no, you don't. But they're obsessed with encounters, and again, I've already explained that encounters have nothing to do with a crime if there's nothing criminal attached to them. So, you can have an encounter with a person 20 times. There's nothing wrong with that, so long as nothing criminal has occurred. But they're stuck on this encounter business because this is what Sergeant Joe Fitzgerald has told them. You can tell by what they've said about speaking to Joe over the phone, and you can also tell later in the video when they mention these things again. But this is obviously what Joe Fitzgerald has told them. There must be several encounters, and that's not untrue. To have stalking or harassment, there has to be multiple encounters with somebody, but an encounter is not enough, okay? The essential element for stalking would be threats, repeated threats. So you're looking at nothing here. You're looking at encounters without threats equals nothing. It just encounters. So they're obsessing over the wrong things here if they're trying to set Mr. Armstrong up. Though this is exactly what they're going to arrest him for. They're going to arrest him for encounters without any threats, and they're going to call it stalking. Before we get into her obvious confession that is just ignored completely by the two deputies standing there, we're going to address her claim that she told Mr. Armstrong in an abrasive tone not to come back, and if that matters. So we'll be playing devil's advocate. We'll be giving her the benefit of the doubt that she's just telling the absolute truth here and see how that affects things legally. So the first thing is what they call their first encounter with Mr. Armstrong, which occurred 7 months prior at the jail parking lot. That doesn't count because nobody here on this day has stated that Mr. Armstrong was unwelcomed or that he was told to leave or anything like that. So that encounter does not count. So we're starting with the second encounter, which was 6 days prior to this event where she pulled the gun. So Kersh claims that 6 days prior to this day, Mr. Armstrong came by, says, "I love you," and she says in an abrasive tone, "No, don't ever come back here," blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what can she do legally? Now, she could have called the police on that day and requested a criminal trespass warning, but she did not. And so Mr. Armstrong has allegedly come back on this day, and she's pulled her gun on him. And that is still illegal. You can't pull a gun on someone because you have told them not to come back and they did come back. You can absolutely call the police. You can get a criminal trespass warning issued against them, but you cannot pull a gun. So no matter which way you look at it, this is still aggravated assault, no matter what. So in Ms. Kersh's confession, she states that she ran and got her gun, and then she went and looked through the peephole and saw that Mr. Armstrong was walking away.
And when I got my gun out of my room and I looked through the peephole and it's him, and he turned to walk off.
And so that means that whenever she did confront Mr. Armstrong, she ordered him back to her front porch with a gun. She took a hostage. That's what that means if you have a gun that you are threatening to kill somebody with and you order them back to your front porch. Ms. Kersh goes on to say that she would light Mr. Armstrong up, and then goes on to say that she told Mr. Armstrong, "I will kill you."
So I opened the door and I had my gun right here. I was like, "Look, bud, I'm not playing around. Like, I will light you up and I will kill you."
Kersh tells Patrol Sergeant Jerry Witt that her reason for pulling a gun on Mr. Armstrong and threatening to kill him was that she just felt like she needed to let him know that she ain't fucking around.
I felt like if I didn't let him know, I ain't fucking around. Excuse me. Sorry. So I felt like I needed to let him know that.
What that means, by her own word, by her own confession, is that she did not pull a gun on Mr. Armstrong and threaten to kill him in self-defense. She pulled a gun on Mr. Armstrong and threatened to kill him, to intimidate him, to cause Mr. Armstrong to fear.